AITA for showing up at the location where my husband said he was having guys' night after I saw he wasn't actually there. He says I violated his trust and privacy. But his location tracker showed him somewhere completely different, and now I'm questioning everything about our marriage. I, 29F, am sitting here at 2 a.m., unable to sleep, wondering if I just made the biggest mistake of my life or if my gut instinct was right. My husband Jake, 31M, isn't speaking to me, and I genuinely don't know if I'm the villain in this story or if something much worse is happening. We've been married for 4 years, together for 7 total. For the most part, our marriage has been solid, not perfect, but good. We have our routines, our inside jokes, our shared life. Or at least I thought we did. About 6 months ago, things started feeling off. Nothing I could put my finger on exactly, just a vibe. Jake seemed distracted, distant. He'd be on his phone more than usual, but would angle it away from me. He started working late more frequently. He seemed irritated by things that never bothered him before. When I'd ask if everything was okay, he'd say he was just stressed about work. His company had been going through restructuring, so it seemed plausible. I try to be supportive, give him space, not be that wife who nags.
But the feeling wouldn't go away.
Then, about 2 months ago, Jake started having more guys' nights. He's always had a standing poker night with his buddies twice a month, which I've never had a problem with. But suddenly, there were additional nights, grabbing drinks with coworkers, watching the game at Dave's house, helping his friend Mike move, that kind of thing. Again, I didn't think much of it at first. Guys need time with their friends. I have girls' nights. It's healthy. But it became more frequent. And he started being vague about details. Where are you going tonight? Just meeting up with the guys. Which guys? You know, the usual crew. Where? Just a bar. Probably O'Malley's. Nothing specific. Nothing concrete. And he'd always come home at reasonable times, around 11 p.m. or midnight, so it's not like he was out until 3 a.m. He didn't smell like perfume. He wasn't being secretive about money. But something felt wrong. I hate that I did this, but about 3 weeks ago, I checked our phone plan and realized we had location sharing enabled for both our phones. We'd turned it on years ago when I was traveling for work frequently just for safety reasons. I'd honestly forgotten it was even on. I checked Jake's location one night when he said he was at O'Malley's with Dave and Mike. He wasn't at O'Malley's. He was across town at an address I didn't recognize. I told myself there was a logical explanation. Maybe they changed venues. Maybe he got the name of the bar wrong. Maybe the location was glitching. But then it happened again. He said he was at Mike's house watching the game. His location showed him at a different, unfamiliar address. My anxiety was through the roof.
I didn't want to be that wife.
I didn't want to be paranoid and controlling. But I also couldn't shake the feeling that something was very wrong. I thought about confronting him directly, but part of me was terrified. Terrified of what I might find out. Terrified that if I was wrong, I'd damage our relationship with my paranoia. Terrified that if I was right, my marriage was over. So I did nothing. I just kept checking his location periodically, and every time he had a guys' night, he was never where he said he'd be. Last Friday was the breaking point. Jake told me Thursday night that he was going to have guys' night on Friday, poker at Dave's house. He said he'd probably be home around midnight. Friday evening, he left around 7 p.m. Kissed me goodbye, said love you, the whole routine. Around 8 p.m., I checked his location. He wasn't at Dave's house. He was at an address in a neighborhood about 20 minutes away, a residential area I wasn't familiar with. I sat there staring at my phone, my heart pounding. All the scenarios ran through my head. An affair. Obviously an affair. He was at someone's house. Some woman's house. He was cheating on me and had been lying for months. I tried to talk myself down. Maybe Dave moved and I didn't know. Maybe they were at a different friend's house. Maybe. But I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't sit there wondering. I needed to know. So I got in my car and drove to the address. It took me about 25 minutes to get there. The whole drive I was shaking. I practiced what I'd say if I found him with another woman. I imagined different scenarios. I felt sick. When I got to the neighborhood, it was nice, newer construction, townhouses, and small apartment buildings. Very residential, very quiet. I found the address. It was a small apartment complex, maybe 10 units total. Modern looking, well maintained. Jake's car was in the parking lot. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it. This was it. I was about to catch my husband cheating. I sat in my car for a minute, trying to decide what to do. Go knock on doors until I found him? Call him and see what he said? Just go home and confront him later? Then I saw him. He came out of one of the ground floor units with a woman. She was maybe in her 50s, professional looking, carrying a folder. They stood outside the door talking for a minute. It didn't look romantic, no touching, no body language that seemed intimate. Just two people having a conversation. Then Jake shook her hand, she walked to her car, and he started walking back to his car. I got out of my car. Jake. He froze. Turned around. The look on his face, shock, then panic, then anger. What are you doing here? What are you doing here? You said you were at Dave's. People who are innocent don't look that panicked. That's what I was thinking. He looked guilty. He looked caught. I can explain. Then explain. Who was that woman? What are you doing at this apartment? Sarah, you need to calm down. Don't tell me to calm down. You've been lying to me for months about where you've been. You're here with some woman when you said you'd be playing poker. What the hell is going on? I was yelling. I know I was yelling. A couple of neighbors came out to see what was happening. Jake grabbed my arm and pulled me toward my car. Get in your car. We'll talk at home.
No.
Tell me right now. Are you cheating on me?
What?
No. Sarah, I'm not cheating on you. Then what are you doing here? He looked at me for a long moment, and then something in his face just broke. I was looking at apartments. The world tilted. What? I was looking at apartments. That woman is a leasing agent. I've been apartment hunting. I couldn't process what he was saying. You're looking for an apartment? For us to move. He shook his head.
No. For me.
I was looking at apartments for me. Everything went cold. You're leaving me? He didn't answer right away, which was an answer in itself. I don't know.
I've been thinking about it.
I needed to see what my options were. I just stood there. I couldn't speak.
Couldn't think.
My husband, had been secretly apartment hunting because he was thinking about leaving me. How long? I finally managed. How long have you been planning this? I'm not. I haven't been planning anything. I've just been confused, unhappy. I needed to figure out what I wanted. And you couldn't talk to me about it? You've been lying to me for months, sneaking around looking at apartments, and you couldn't tell me you were unhappy? I didn't know how. Every time I tried to bring up that I was feeling disconnected or stressed, you'd brush it off or change the subject. That's not true. It is true. Anytime I've tried to have a serious conversation about us, about how I'm feeling, you act like everything is fine, and I'm just being dramatic. We stood there in the parking lot of this stupid apartment complex, yelling at each other, and I realized I couldn't remember the last time we'd actually had a deep conversation about our relationship, about anything real. Eventually, one of the neighbors threatened to call the police if we didn't leave, so we both drove home separately. The car ride home was the longest 20 minutes of my life. My mind was racing. My husband was leaving me, had been planning to leave me, had been lying to me for months. When we got home, we sat in the living room and had the most painful conversation of my life. Jake said he's been unhappy for over a year. He said he feels like we've grown apart, that we're roommates more than partners. He said he's tried to talk to me about it, but feels like I don't really listen, that I just want to maintain the status quo and pretend everything is fine. He said he wasn't sure if he wanted a divorce, but he needed to know he had an escape plan if he decided to leave. So he'd been looking at apartments, figuring out finances, preparing for the possibility. I asked why he lied about where he was. He said he knew if he told me he was apartment hunting, I'd freak out, and we'd have this exact conversation before he was ready. I asked if there was someone else. He swore there wasn't, that this was purely about our marriage, not about another person. I asked how he could just give up, without even trying to fix things. He said he didn't think I'd be willing to actually change anything, that I'd just want to do couples counseling where we pretend to work on things, but nothing really changes. I was devastated, and angry, and hurt, and confused. But I was also forced to admit in that moment that maybe he wasn't entirely wrong. Maybe I had been avoiding difficult conversations. Maybe I had been brushing off his concerns because I didn't want to face that we had real problems. We stayed up until 4 a.m. talking, or fighting, or both. In the end, Jake said he needed space to think. He said he'd stay with his friend Mike for a few days. He's been gone for 4 days now. Since he left, I've been replaying everything. And I've told a few people what happened, my best friend, my sister, my mom. The reactions have been split. My best friend said Jake is a coward for secretly planning to leave instead of being honest with me, and that I had every right to track him down when his location didn't match his story. My sister said I violated his privacy by tracking his location and showing up unannounced, and that even if he was being sketchy, I should have confronted him at home rather than ambushing him in public. My mom said we both made mistakes, but that tracking him down like that was desperate and controlling, and probably pushed him further away. Jake has texted me a few times. Brief messages. He's angry that I tracked him. He says I proved his point, that I don't trust him, that I'm controlling, that I'd rather spy on him than have an honest conversation. I tried to explain that I only tracked him because he was lying to me, that if he'd been honest about being unhappy, we could have talked about it like adults. He said if I'd really been open to honest conversations, he would have felt comfortable telling me the truth in the first place. I don't know who's right anymore. Part of me feels justified. My husband was lying to me repeatedly, sneaking around, preparing to leave me. I had a right to investigate what was going on. But part of me feels like I made everything worse. If I'd just confronted him directly instead of tracking him, maybe we could have had this conversation without the public scene and the accusations of invasion of privacy. And the worst part is, I don't even know if our marriage is over. Jake hasn't said he wants a divorce. But he also hasn't said he wants to work on things. He's just thinking. So Reddit, AITA? Was I wrong to track my husband's location and show up where he really was when I knew he'd lied about being at guys' night? Or was I justified in trying to find out the truth when he'd been lying to me for months? I genuinely don't know anymore. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Edit. A lot of people are asking if we've had conversations about being unhappy before this. Honestly, I've been thinking about it constantly since Friday, and I can remember a few times Jake tried to bring up that he was feeling disconnected or wanted to check in about our relationship, and I probably did brush it off. I thought he was just having a bad day, or being moody. I didn't realize he was seriously unhappy. But maybe I should have paid more attention. Edit 2. For those asking about the location tracking, we both have access to each other's locations. It's not like I secretly installed a tracker on his phone. We set it up together years ago, and both forgot about it. So it wasn't a violation in the sense that he didn't know it was on, but I acknowledge that actively tracking him without his knowledge in the moment might have been wrong. Edit 3. Jake is not on Reddit as far as I know, but if he reads this, he'll probably recognize the story. I don't care at this point. I need unbiased feedback. Update, 5 days later. I wasn't sure if I should update, but so much has happened in the past few days that I feel like I need to process it somewhere, and the comments on my original post actually helped me think more clearly. First, thank you to everyone who gave honest feedback, even when it was hard to hear. A lot of you said ESH, everyone sucks here, and after really sitting with everything, I think you're right. Jake came home yesterday, not to move back in, but to talk. We sat down and had the most honest conversation we've had in years. Maybe ever. I started by apologizing for tracking him and showing up. I explained that I was scared and hurt and didn't know what else to do, but that I understand it was a violation of his privacy and that it probably made him feel cornered and ambushed. I told him that regardless of what happens with our marriage, I'm sorry for how I handled it. He was quiet for a minute, and then he apologized too. He said he should have been honest with me about how unhappy he was. He said he'd been a coward, that he'd been avoiding conflict by lying about where he was instead of just telling me he needed space to think about our relationship. Then we talked about the real issues. Jake said he's felt for a long time like I don't really see him. Like I'm so focused on maintaining the appearance of a happy marriage that I don't actually pay attention to whether he's happy. He said he's tried to bring up concerns before about feeling disconnected, about wanting more quality time together, about feeling like we're just going through the motions, and he felt like I'd minimize his feelings or change the subject. I had to admit he was right. When he'd bring up feeling distant or wanting to talk about us, I'd get defensive or anxious and would try to prove everything was fine rather than actually listening to what he was saying. I was so afraid of conflict or of finding out we had real problems that I'd just avoid it. He said that over time he stopped trying to talk to me about it because he felt like I didn't want to hear it. So he started pulling away. And then he started feeling trapped, like he was in a marriage where he couldn't be honest about his feelings, where he had to pretend everything was fine all the time. That's when he started looking at apartments. Not because he definitely wanted to leave, but because he needed to know he had an option. He needed to feel like he wasn't stuck. Hearing all of this was devastating, but also clarifying, because I could see how we'd gotten here. How I'd contributed to this by avoiding difficult conversations and dismissing his concerns. I asked him if there was anything I could do, if there was a way to fix this.
He said he didn't know.
He said he's been unhappy for so long that he's not sure if he even believes things can change. But he said he's willing to try couples counseling if I'm actually serious about working on our communication and not just doing it to check a box. I promised him I was serious, that I wanted to really listen this time, even if what he had to say was hard to hear. We agreed to start couples counseling. Our first session is next week. Jake is going to stay at Mike's for another week or two while we start therapy. He said he needs a little more space to process everything, and honestly, I think that's fair. I also scheduled individual therapy for myself. A lot of the comments pointed out that my fear of conflict and my tendency to avoid difficult conversations probably comes from somewhere, and I need to figure out where and how to change that pattern. I don't know if we're going to make it. I really don't. There's a part of me that's terrified he's already checked out and that therapy will just be a formality before we split up. But there's also a part of me that's hopeful. Because for the first time in a long time, we had a real, honest conversation. We both admitted our mistakes. We both said we wanted to try. That has to count for something, right? Update 2, 3 weeks later. We've had 4 couples counseling sessions now, and 2 things have become very clear. Our marriage has serious problems that go way deeper than I realized, that we both contributed to those problems in significant ways. Our therapist has been helping us understand our communication patterns, and it's been eye-opening and painful. Apparently, I have a pattern of conflict avoidance that stems from growing up in a home where my parents fought constantly and eventually divorced. I learned to associate any relationship conflict with impending catastrophe, so I avoid it at all costs, even when that avoidance creates bigger problems. Jake, meanwhile, has a pattern of emotional withdrawal from his own childhood stuff. When he feels unheard or dismissed, instead of pushing harder to be heard, he shuts down and pulls away. So we created this toxic cycle where he'd try to bring up concerns, I'd get anxious and dismissive, he'd feel unheard and withdraw, I'd interpret his withdrawal as everything is fine, and the cycle would continue. Neither of us was doing it on purpose, but we were both doing it. In therapy, we've been learning how to actually communicate. How I can sit with discomfort instead of avoiding it. How Jake can be more direct about his needs instead of hinting, and then giving up when I don't get it. It's hard. Really hard. There have been sessions where we both cried. Sessions where we fought. Sessions where I left wondering if we're just delaying the inevitable. But there have also been moments of real connection. Moments where I feel like I'm seeing Jake clearly for the first time in years. Moments where he's told me he feels heard and understood in a way he hasn't in a long time. Last week, Jake moved back home. We're not fixed, not even close. But we both agreed that we wanted to try to rebuild while living together, rather than maintaining separation. We've made some concrete changes. We have a weekly check-in where we talk about how we're feeling about us, with ground rules about listening without getting defensive weary, doing more activities together that aren't just watching TV, cooking together, taking walks, playing board games. We're both in individual therapy in addition to couples therapy. I'm actively working on not dismissing or minimizing Jake's feelings, Even when hearing them makes me uncomfortable, Jake is actively working on being more direct and not pulling away. When he's upset, I'm not going to lie and say everything is perfect now. It's not. We still have hard days. We still have moments where old patterns creep back in. But we're trying, really trying. And honestly, whether we make it or not, I'm grateful for what I'm learning. About myself, about relationships, about communication. A lot of people in the comments asked if I regret tracking him down that night. The honest answer is, I don't know. On one hand, it forced a conversation that needed to happen. If I hadn't shown up, Jake might have just continued apartment hunting in secret until one day he was ready to leave, and I'd have been blindsided. On the other hand, the way it happened, the public confrontation, the accusations, probably made everything harder and more painful than it needed to be. I think the real problem wasn't that I tracked him. It was that our marriage had deteriorated to a point where tracking him felt necessary. And that's on both of us. So I guess my final answer to AITA is, we were both assholes. In different ways at different times, but both of us contributed to nearly destroying our marriage. The question now is whether we can build something better from the wreckage. I'll update again if anything major changes, but for now, we're just taking it one day at a time. Thank you, Reddit, for the tough love and honest feedback. It helped more than you know. Final update, 2 months later. I'm adding this final update because several people have DM'd asking how things turned out, and I figure anyone who followed this story deserves closure. Jake and I are still together. Still in therapy, both couples and individual. Still working on things. It's not perfect. We still have hard conversations. We still sometimes fall into old patterns, but we catch ourselves faster now, and we're better at repairing things when we mess up.